Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Heartland Mamas. I'm Murray Briel.
And I'm Heidi Henry, coming to you from our two socially distant studios at the edge of the Great Red Divide, actually, the island in a sea of red, bringing you the message of progressivism and the Democratic Party across the hinterlands, if you will. Find all of our previous episodes at Heartland Mamas, MAMAS.com, every podcast platform, YouTube, and proudly carried on the Demcast network. So, Murray, today we're going to talk about when you're the president and you have the entire Department of Justice at your disposal. Because
Wait a
that's
minute.
not
You
how it
mean the
works.
Department of Just Trump?
Just Trump. Yeah.
Yes, the
Yeah.
Department of Just Trump.
That's what it is.
And we have to. I mean, yeah, those of you who are regular listeners know how often Heidi and I take you down memory lane and through history. But before we get into today's show, it bears repeating that the Attorney General of the United States of America is not a Boy Scout. He has been in the political realm since he was a young man. He has been involved in every major political, legal loophole situation you can find in the last 20 years.
For the Republican
So
Party.
he's not a good dude. Oh, yes,
Only for the
Billy Barr, welcome. Come on in, Billy Barr.
Yeah. Well, the Republican Party has used Bill Barr as their fixer for all of their problems since Iran-Contra, which was Ronald Reagan. Bill Barr, kept Ronald Reagan from being impeached and going to prison for what he did in the Iran-Contra affair. And if you don't know what that is, shame on you. You should know what the Iran-Contra affair is, and another reason why I hate Ronald Reagan. Bill, whenever there's a problem, W also infamously would have been impeached and gone to prison because of the weapons of mass destruction lie that got us into two wars that we're still in nearly 20 years later. That was also Bill Barr that fixed that. I think the only one he didn't have to fix anything for was Bush 1. Was Bush Senior. I don't think they needed to call him in for anything. But the Democrats really don't have anybody like that because they depend on constitutional law. But the Republicans and Bill Barr take the law. They'll change the meaning of the law using modern definitions for words instead of the words that were the definitions that were used when the Constitution or the laws were written, like the Sherman Act, which we'll discuss here in a minute. And they twist it to fit the narrative to get their person off the hook. Their whole job, Bill Barr's whole job, is to keep people out of prison. Now, he's going to try really hard to keep Trump out of prison. I don't think, unless Trump leaves the country, that he's safe from the state of New York.
I ask who's going to keep Bill Barr out of prison.
Well, we've talked frequently, Murray, you and I, not so much on air, but privately, about will Bill Barr be disbarred? The fact that he's not being disbarred right now is stunning to me.
Listen, they can't even get Matt Gaetz disbarred. There's not a chance in hell we're going to get Bill Barr disbarred.
Yeah. When your state representative has a picture of himself in an orange jumpsuit, you don't have a really good state representative. And I'm a really big believer in once you've served your time for your crime, that's in your past and that you need to move on. But Matt Gaetz is just a reprehensible orange-nosed jerk. So I have no respect for the man. But Murray, here's some of the things that we can count on the Trump administration misusing the law for. And let's talk about the tariffs. There was an early part of the Trump presidency. And we have a huge lawsuit going on right now where a lot of corporations and a lot of states are suing the Trump administration because the tariffs have cost the taxpayer so much money. The tariffs don't cost China money. They cost us money because it costs more to bring their goods in. But you may not notice when, your compression gloves cost 90 cents more because of the tariff, because it's only 90 cents. But you multiply that by 10,000 and you're talking about some real money. So when Trump knew he was going to put in tariffs ostensibly to get after China. I'm not sure exactly how that works, except the man has failed at everything he's done. So, of course, this makes sense to him. He made sure that Ivanka, his daughter's patents, his daughter's stuff that's made in China, including his Trump MAGA stuff, all that red hat stuff, and his ties, those extra long ties also made in China, that they were exempt from tariffs. And that was passed through at the same time the tariffs were put on everything else. Everything else. But if your last name is Trump or, was Trump, that doesn't count for you. Your stuff is tariff free. Tariffs are taxation without representation. They're part of the reason we had a Revolutionary War. And here we are. Here we are, Murray, with more BS from the Trump administration. Let's see how bad we can make it for all Americans.
And Heidi, you touched on something there. There's a double standard, and the double standard is for, as a Democrat, we would talk a lot about the double standard and how the Republicans are held to one standard, Democrats another.
Absolutely.
Individual candidates, the twisting. And that's kind of the law's job is to, if you're a defense attorney, is to twist the law to fit your client and make sure that they get what they want.
Right.
That's a part of this whole game that we play.
Right.
But there's some serious danger in this game that we play, and that's the precedent that's set. You mentioned the tariffs. You mentioned getting the pickly poo. All right. Anyway,
getting Reagan off the hook for selling guns, selling weapons under the table from the Sandinistas, from the Contras to Iran, who wasn't supposed to have them.
I mean, all of the good things that Donald Trump feels that Bill Barr is doing for him and that Bill Barr is doing are coming back to bite them and him in the rump. And I think they will overall become a major issue. So, I mean, the Department of Justice's job is not just to argue court cases.
Right.
It's to enforce criminality. It is to help make sure we are adhering to the laws that we are governed by, that all bodies are adhering to the laws that we're governed by. And clearly we know that the Trumps are governed by a whole entirely different set of laws, as is apparently most of the Republican Party. Right?
Here's the thing, Murray, is that we have watched Trump his entire life subvert the law, subvert reality to fit his narrative.
Utilize the law as a weapon. All of his slap suits, he gets out of paying everything because he sues. He realizes that he can pay lawyers to keep things tied up so he never faces any responsibility for his actions.
Right.
And I think that's how he's using the Department of Justice as well. I think we have forgotten that the Department of Justice is there for the United States as a whole. Take a look at the Gretchen Whitmer situation, right?
Oh, God.
Gretchen Whitmer, Governor Whitmer,
from Michigan.
The FBI discovered a plot to that was in the final stages of being fulfilled. Right. That was a serious plot to kidnap, torture, and kill the governor in order to reclaim it.
To try her. And if they had to use waterboarding, it was going to be okay. To make her confess to her crimes. This is how.
So, and it's not just her. It's the governor. Now it's the governor of Virginia. But here's yes, clearly Trump is inciting it.
Yes.
And the Department of Justice oversees the FBI, and the FBI found out about it and foiled the plot. But the Department of Justice has not come out and said these are acts of terror.
Right.
The Department of Justice is supposed to execute the law equally and protect. That's cops are supposed to protect. Right. Law enforcement is supposed to protect. Our laws are supposed to protect. The perversion is so dramatic at this point that they are not even able to come out and declare these what were they, the Montana militiamen?
No, they were
or what's their name?
Something.
The crazy group that was going to kidnap Governor Whitmer and Governor of Virginia
the small penis
as a
society
terrorist.
Wolverines.
Yes, Wolverines. There you go. So they weren't going to come out as a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
They won't define white supremacy as terrorists.
No.
They have
No.
sided with every wrong-headed impulse that Donald Trump has had.
Right.
And we're seeing that with this antitrust case that just came up.
Murray, I want to just touch on this thing with Governor Whitmer and Governor Northam, which it didn't become as fully developed as the Whitmer plot. But it's still out there. It still exists, and people are still getting arrested for it. Trumpy Jr., decided to go on the record saying that when his father wins re-election, the first thing he's going to do is break up with the FBI. And this was a discussion regarding what could have happened to Governor Whitmer, that the FBI foiled this plot. So now that means to prevent the FBI from doing its job in the future, if Trump is reelected, he will get rid of the FBI.
Well, he already has it in for the FBI.
Right.
We know that from the Russia investigation, from the Mueller report, from Chris Wray, from the FBI coming out and producing its own videos saying this is real. Of course he's gunning for the FBI. He's gunning for anyone who does not bow down and worship to him. And,
Right.
we talk a lot about how dangerous the time between the election and
Yeah.
The inauguration is going to be.
Right.
And we talk about how volatile it's going to be. And we're always, when I talk about it even, I'm thinking about the streets. I'm thinking about people fighting, rising up. What I don't give enough attention to is the damage that he is going to do in the lame duck. The damage that he and how many of those Republican senators that are outgoing are going to try to wreak before he leaves. And that includes further perversion of the Department of Justice, further erosion of the intelligence communities.
Right.
He is a narcissistic fascist, and that's the same thing that Hitler was.
Right.
And what did Hitler do? When Hitler knew there was no doubt he was done, it was over. Instead of just killing himself, right? He ordered that every German troop still standing burn their country to the ground.
Right.
Food supplies, buildings, bomb the cities.
Yep.
That's what he's going to do. He's going to burn this mother effer down.
Well, that is his intent, because he's not a good loser. He thinks that he is always winning, and he's not winning. He's never really won anything. He's stolen, subverted, mismanaged, mishandled, but mostly stolen everything he has. And when we talk about how he does things, how he avoids justice, I think he's brought it to the point where he can no longer avoid justice. And I think we have a blueprint for this. What happened in Wisconsin, when Wisconsin had had enough with their very corrupt Republican legislature and governor. And before the inauguration of the new governor, the new Democratic governor, the legislature stripped him of all of his powers. Now,
I like that idea. Oh, Heidi, from your lips to to Congress's ears.
They already have this plan where they're going to strip the powers of the presidency however they can. And here's the problem. Where Wisconsin was able to change its governor, it didn't change its legislature, and it didn't change its Supreme Court. So every time they do something, they have to keep appealing it up and up and up. And in some cases, it has been backed by our Supreme Court, by the federal Supreme Court. It's gone that far. And I think on one of their mask mandates, So instead of advocating for public health, they're advocating for a deadly virus. And because that makes sense to every Republican for some reason. And so we're watching Wisconsin try to fight within itself. Now, it's got a very important election this cycle where it could change its legislature. Now, it can't change its Supreme Court, but it can change its legislature, and I don't think it'll take both houses, but I think it'll kind of stymie some of the crap fest that goes up there. I know almost 30 people that were going to retire and move to Wisconsin that have said, you know what, we're out. We're out. You know, I know people
Really?
that won't even vacation there anymore. I know people that own vacation homes that are like, until they get, it's like, there's two places I hear that the most about. That's Florida and Wisconsin. Oh, and Michigan. I hear it about Michigan. Until they get their act together, they're tapping out because, and I don't blame them. You know, when Stan and I decided to build our retirement home here on our farm, it's because yeah, once you go out, it's like when you travel to Europe, you realize how different it is in the United States and how we
Absolutely. When
could
you
have
travel
it better.
anywhere around the world, you
Right.
realize that there's such a different culture than in the United States.
So, and when you travel to
You
Florida, and
open
I
your
don't,
eyes to knowing that American exceptionalism is not real.
we're
Sorry, go
not
ahead.
exceptional. We're just people. And that's that myth. And it's like when you go to Florida and you see all the crazy ass crap that goes on down in Florida right now, and in Tennessee and in Wisconsin and in Michigan. And you know, I know people, I know so many people that have moved, like bought places in Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, and have moved back because they're like, you won't, you don't even know how bad it is, you know. So
Well, speaking of bad places,
yeah.
that absolutely brings us to something else I wanted to talk about today,
Yeah.
and that is Bill Barr's Department of Justice making a move in an antitrust
Oh
case
god.
against Google. So,
So yeah.
there's a few things that I feel I need to let our viewers know in the beginning. One, the quickest settling to an antitrust case in the history was like 7 years, maybe five.
Right.
I'm not sure. That this is something that has been being investigated for over 10 years and they have found no wrongdoing.
Right.
All antitrust come from, like Heidi mentioned, an ancient act from long, long time ago.
The Sherman Act.
Wording in and of itself is very Trumpian in its flair and dramatics.
Yeah.
They asked for, yeah, there's so many things wrong with it, but why I remember this, Heidi, is because you said that Tennessee, Florida, the 11 attorney generals, the 11 state attorney generals that
Yeah.
signed on
Yep.
that are cooperating and a part of this antitrust suit are all Republican AGs.
Poor red states.
So apparently, Republican AGs for red states think that this is something that's important
Yeah.
that isn't. And we look at it and go, why? Okay, why are they attacking Google? Do we have any ideas? So
Yeah.
that's another thing you have to look at.
Well, so they're attacking Google not because it's the right place to take out their anger or it's the right antitrust suit to bring hello Amazon.
Hi.
Yeah. uh, they're bringing it out because Google owns YouTube. And YouTube will put disclaimers on some of the Trump videos that are just so outlandish, outrageous, lying, sack of shit videos and say this is all a lie. We just want you to know as a disclaimer. And because of that, Trump unleashed the DOJ, the Department of Just Trump, on Google.
And
Now
I'm not
here's
quite
the problem.
sure that it isn't just also a scare tactic.
Oh, of course it
Google
is.
has had these questions. They've come forth, they've talked, they've presented documents, they've cooperated.
Yeah.
And he cannot get Facebook and TikTok investigation up and running and in court quick enough.
Yeah.
I wonder if this isn't also a signifier to those other tech giants out there, particularly those in the social media, that they're coming for them.
Well, but are they? Because you have to realize that some of these tech giants, Facebook, Amazon, and a few of the
Larry
others.
Ellison from Oracle,
Well,
who, by the way, Trump wanted to sell TikTok to.
right. Because these are Trumpian, Trump supporting entities. Google and YouTube are not. They're not. They're not Trump supporters. They're
Now, Heidi, you mean to tell me that if the Department of Justice, the place that is supposed to execute and enforce the laws fairly and equitably, changes the rules for someone named Trump or for the president?
absolutely,
Oh, Melania, I
absolutely.
think you're pulling my leg.
Because Twitter which Trump lives and breathes by, who at one point got to say that his tweets are the law of the land. They are his prime directive, right? But then now that he wants the Mueller report released unredacted, which would kill him, it would bury him with the truth because he is a subversive criminal. Apparently his tweets are not any longer the law of the land.
Well, a federal judge just last week was awfully curious about that same point, and when
Exactly.
he claimed the declassification of all materials related to the Mueller investigations and Spygate or whatever the hell he wants to call it,
Right.
he did that. A federal judge was like, "Hey, then, so that's what you mean because we ruled in favor of you." Not being allowed to be censored because it's a public account because it is
Right.
identified with you. So now we're into some sketchy area.
So it was ruled on that Trump could run the country via tweet. It was ruled that he could
Basically.
not be censored because this was his way of communicating with the masses. And then
And it
he
was official.
tweeted that he wanted the Mueller report released to everybody, completely unredacted, nothing blacked out.
And the
Via
Department of
tweet.
Justice is like, no.
Barr is like,
No,
don't do
he
that,
didn't
don't do
really
that,
mean.
Trumpy pig.
Yeah. They filed it, and the judge said, listen, you have 5 days to talk to him and find out what the hell he meant
I
because
think that
this
tweet was
needs to
pretty
be heard and
clear.
figured out.
The tweet was
You
pretty
can't
clear.
have it both ways.
It was,
Right? Well, we all know that.
yeah.
But this is setting up the groundwork for being like, all right, which keeps me a little bit of hope. And I gotta say, overall, the Department of Justice is a hot freaking mess.
Yeah.
Everything in the world is a mess. But seeing all of the early voters, seeing the lines, and we're going to be doing a voting special here coming up, it makes me have some hope that this dystopian hellscape that we are living through will end
Yeah.
at some point.
Marie, I was listening to Bill Barr's speech down in New Orleans. His speech to a gathering of law enforcement personnel. Not personnel, but like chiefs, sergeants, higher ups, not the rank and file policemen, but the higher ups. And some of what he said was bone chilling because and they're enthusiastic for him because he's the law and order guy, and he repeats the same misnomers, the same dog whistles over and over again about Democrats in blue states being soft on crime, which we know is not true. And he talks in dog whistles about defunding the police without really saying what that means. But then he did pivot and talk about how, those blue states, they want to change it and invest some of our law and order money into social programs. And I'm telling you, Murray, how many troop transporters does any police department need? Because the city I live in has several, and we have 5,000 people. Apparently, we don't need social programs. We don't need to address the fact that people are depressed.
We just need more guns and more violent people to shoot them.
Right. Well, so
Pretty much the solution.
apparently we don't need to address family violence. We don't need to address child abuse. We don't need to find the root causes of stuff. We need to send in a ballistic missile to a domestic violence fight. That's exactly what Barr is saying. Instead of having a counselor come in and say, "Look, let's get to the bottom of this issue, and let's prescribe some counseling for your family." Instead, let's roll up with
Or
a
some
troop
support
transporter.
services.
Huh?
You're about to get evicted. Hey, let's see what we can do to help.
Right.
That those things will reduce people's stress, but we don't take. And I do need to bring something up here that you triggered for me, Heidi.
Yeah.
And that is when you were talking. Bill Barr was in Missouri, and we mentioned this in the beginning of the show. And he blows in to talk about Operation Legend. does a press conference with the same thing, a few high up ranking law enforcement agents,
Right.
blows in, talks for 10 minutes about what an incredible success it is. He lied about how many people they had captured in Missouri. He then refused to take any
Right.
questions and he bolted out.
Right.
So that tells you, and that was right on the heels of Donald Trump in one of his stump speeches talking about how the Department of Justice, no, how the U.S. Marshals, which falls under the Department of
Right.
Justice, went in and committed an assassination on an American citizen in Portland.
Right.
So we just, the fact that every facet of our government is seeped in ridiculousness and
Right.
self agenda is horrible. And one of the first things we're going to have to fix is the DOJ.
Well, and I want to tell you, Marie, we referenced both Missouri and New Orleans, who are both involved in elections right now that are going to reform their police departments, their manner of policing, their judges, their state's attorneys, their district attorneys. They're going to the polls. Every single candidate running is running on reform. Every single one of them. So these are deep red states. These are states that are usually in Donald Trump's pocket, and they've had enough. They've had enough because we do need counseling. We cannot keep sending people, men and women who have law enforcement training, into situations that they're not trained to do. They are not trained counselors. They're not violence advocates. They're not.
Well, Heidi, I'm going to take it one step farther
Yeah.
from you and say the entire system, which we've talked about on other shows, is based off of a militaristic, slave controlling
Well,
premise.
yes.
And that is why we do not have any sort of real justice system. So that's a whole other show for another day.
In a show that we really want to do after the election is over, because we have some really important things to talk about this week. I really don't know if there'll be a debate later this week, but we're going to talk about that on Thursday. And we've got some other things, some election shenanigans we're going to talk about. Huh?
It says I'm torn here, folks. My gut tells me he's not going to do it. He's not actually going to debate.
I don't think he will, because it doesn't fall into his blowhard asshole Trumpiness. If they
But on the flip side, he absolutely desperately needs this 100,000 times more than Biden. In fact, all of the political strategists are explaining to him that that's why he's been so trying to be jokey and dancy, because they want him more relatable,
God,
like he was in 16.
Are scarred in my mind.
Yeah, I know.
It's like watching Elaine from Seinfeld.
Dance. Oh, that's a sore spot for me. That's what my family says I dance like.
Oh, I'm sure I do too. Dance like nobody's looking. Well, hopefully nobody's watching when I'm dancing, because it can't be good. But,
All right, folks.
Yeah. We have changes to make in the Department of Justice. We have to hold on, 93, 92 more days until the inauguration, which the Henrys will be in Washington, D.C. for, by the way. I've never gone to one, but we're going to go for that and stay for the Women's March the next day.
Very cool.
I know.
Well, good.
Yeah.
So, we thank you for listening to What It Means When You Have a Department of Just Trump. Yeah. We record every Tuesday and Thursday live on Facebook, so you can join us. Tell all your friends and family. Thursday, we have an awesome show coming up. I'm going to be doing a poll watching credential training prior to it. We're going to talk about some of the shenanigans that we are expecting to happen at the polls and what you can do to be involved, and some of the things that have already started to happen. So make sure you get out, vote between now and Thursday. If you haven't, that's okay. You've got plenty of time. Go do it now.
Go early.
Like, subscribe, share. Tune in to Heartland Mamas.
MAMAS.com. Find us on every podcast platform, YouTube, and proudly carried on the Demcast USA Network. See you later, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye.